بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم أما بعد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير وبك نستعين يا فتاح يا فتاح يا فتاح. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Respected brothers and sisters, viewers, ahlan wa sahlan. Welcome back to another episode of What's Up Sheikh with myself, Ma'aruf Rahman. Alhamdulillah, we're back again on What's Up Sheikh, and as you know, What's Up Sheikh is your show, is for you guys so that you could sort of post your questions on WhatsApp, and we can discuss live on air. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So inshallah, we have with us our dear Sheikh Ustad, Sheikh Shamsul Duha. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. How are you?
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, I'm fine.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Good to see you, Sheikh. Inshallah, without a further ado, let's move on to our questions today. I believe we have quite a lot of questions. So inshallah, brothers and sisters, please, if you can share the show, the live streaming to your WhatsApp numbers, inshallah, share it with the people, your family members, your friends, and also if you can start asking questions, inshallah. We are live on air right now, inshallah, so please go ahead and start asking questions. So let's move on to our first questions. Our first question today is Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear Sheikh, can you please give us some advice on marrying a divorcee? So I believe, Sheikh, the brother here is asking, he was previously married, and now he's sort of struggling to find a spouse because he was previously married. So he's mentioning in his question it's hard for him to find a potential spouse, a sister. And then he goes on to mention, surely our deen doesn't look down or on those who have been divorced, brother or sister. Please give us some nasiha on this subject in which our community so desperately needs education. That's his sort of question, and also he's asking for some advice.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man wala amma ba'd. So I'm not sure exactly which angle this question is coming from. It's useful to be able to empathize with the questioner's context. So either the questioner's context is that he or she is the divorcee and they have perceived some degree of social stigma in the community. Is that right?
Yes.
So they've perceived some degree of social stigma in the community and would like me to say a few words, perhaps that might go towards rectifying that. Secondly, I suppose an alternative would perhaps maybe that, which probably is unlikely to be the scenario, which is he's looking to marry a divorcee and wants advice around, whether there are any issues he needs to be aware of. It would be useful if that was clarified, but I'm going to assume it's the first, okay? Because I can see a clear context there, and I appreciate that there is an issue here. So, firstly, I think that most people are aware, they know that Shar'an, from an Islamic point of view, there is no grounds for stigma against divorcees, right? Whether they're men or women, whether they have children or don't have children, there is no stigma. However, I think everybody knows this, but for various reasons, some cultures are more reticent, more hesitant when it comes to marriage to and marrying divorcees, and they have their own reasons for that. But a lot of it isn't very well informed, and it's based on this idea that there can be problems. So let's deal with the principle first. It takes 2 seconds for us to realize, upon a moment's reflection on the Prophet ﷺ's life, that divorcees aren't an issue, right? We make so much out of Khadija radiallahu anha's marriage to the Prophet ﷺ. And everybody romanticizes about the fact that, look at the Prophet, you know, he married somebody much older than him, etc., etc. But we don't talk about the fact that Khadija radiallahu anha was also somebody who had been previously married.
Mm-hmm.
Not only had she been previously married, she also had children, right, from her previous marriage, and those children frequented the house of the Prophet ﷺ. And in fact, it's one of those children, the name isn't coming to my mind right now, but it's one of those children who is the famous narrator of the ahadith about the description, the physical descriptions of the Prophet ﷺ. If I recall that correctly. So the point of the matter is that, you know, the Prophet ﷺ's first wife was divorcee, and so were other wives. Salama radiallahu anha was also a divorcee, right? And so forth. And the point I'm trying to get at is that there's no issue from an Islamic point of view, right? And from an Islamic point of view, it's the same thing. The question of children, etc. These are all practical issues. Yes, there are shari'i considerations around who is responsible for children. So, for example, if a man is marrying a divorcee and she has children, the Sharia would expect the father of those children to be contributing to their upkeep, to be contributing to their maintenance. And if this man took care of them with his own finances, then that would be an act of generosity on his part, for which he will be rewarded, of course, but it is not his duty. So the point is, the issue of stigma is more to do with culture, and this culture is to do with certain perceptions about baggage. So basically, a divorcee has baggage, you know, she's been married before, etc. Or if she has children, then those children are baggage. But if you if you are the divorcee, then I guess this advice goes to the rest of the community, that there should be no reason for discrimination towards these problems. And really, if the reason why we have a problem with divorcees is nothing more than just negative perception, then we have to ask ourselves why we have that negative perception. So that's one thing. You know, the Prophet ﷺ simply said, you know, we should prioritize deen. But one of the reasons why sometimes these perceptions persist and exist and are deep-rooted is partly because, as a society, the people don't take their responsibilities properly, right? They don't fulfill their responsibilities properly. You know, so for example, you know, there can be and also people, there's a prejudice results in bad behavior. So for example, if a mother-in-law didn't want her son to marry a divorcee, it often translates into ill treatment, bad words, hostility, that kind of thing. You know, look, this is me saying these words is not going to change society overnight. So therefore, my direct advice to whoever's asking the question is, you have to continue to look. If you are the divorcee who's looking, you have to continue to look and work on yourself and make yourself the best version of yourself that you can be. Be a person of taqwa and piety and good akhlaq, inshallah ta'ala. And eventually you will find someone who appreciates those qualities. All right. It is not always necessarily the case that people are discriminating against somebody because they are a divorcee, because you being a divorcee is just one aspect of your personality. It's just one characteristic in your personality. There are lots and lots of other things in your personality as well that people look at, and that also has to be taken into consideration, because sometimes somebody who isn't a divorcee, right, struggles to get married because there's something about themselves that people are not gravitating towards. These things happen, so we have to continue, make ourselves the best version of ourselves, put proposals in to the right people who would appreciate similar values as us, and who would look upon our qualities as good qualities. You know, it's no point you being a good practicing Muslim and constantly proposing to people who don't value practicing Muslims, for example, right? It's just not going to work out. If you're a practicing Muslim, that's what you value, but the only thing you're ever looking at is looks, right? Looks and money. Then you're not going to get that reciprocation, because you're going to be discriminated against on the point of religiosity, right? So look, these are just realities of life. You know, how long it takes a person to get married is part of his destiny. We have to take it with patience, and we have to keep on trying. And eventually, whatever is written for us will, inshallah ta'ala, happen. We have to keep on making the effort. And remember that, you know, our lives, our servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our ubudiyah, you know, and our destinies are not tied to marriage, right? They're not tied to marriage. Marriage isn't the be all and end all. Focus on the objective, and the marriage issues will fall into place. Okay, inshallah. Don't let yourself get down over marriage and marriage related issues. Take that in your stride with everything else, and you know, and you will see, inshallah ta'ala, because you have your priorities straight. That is exactly the thing that will attract a family, a guardian, a woman, or a man, and end up with you finding a good spouse, someone who doesn't carry unfair and unnecessary prejudices, inshallah ta'ala. And of course, you know, we pray for you, and we ask that everybody else prays for you. Whatever, I don't know if I've interpreted the situation correctly. Whatever the situation is, whoever is in this kind of situation, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala find them a suitable spouse as soon as possible. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove these prejudices from our communities, and also remove the reasons behind these prejudices, and remove the obstacles that are resulting in this type of prejudice.
Shukran, Jazakallah. Thank you, Sheikh. I think you've made very, very crucial, important points there. And I think the viewers, brothers and sisters out there, please, inshallah, if you can, you don't have to, try and take notes as well, inshallah, on some of the points Sheikh is making. And then if you have sort of misunderstood certain points, you can ask again for further clarifications, inshallah. So, of course, Sheikh has taken out his time and explained. Let's move on to the next question I have. Assalamu alaikum, Breaks Islamic, they sort of requested a divorce. They are married under British law, English law, and they sort of got the court involved. And will that
Could you repeat that, because I didn't hear the first part. I didn't hear the first part at all.
So the question is not articulated. So I'm going to read out exactly how it's written. Assalamu alaikum. Can you tell me if a divorcee on British courts breaks the Islamic nikah? So I'm assuming basically if the people.
I don't think it's a divorcee. It's divorce. It's a divorce in British courts if that breaks Islamic nikah.
Yes.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. So it depends. So it's not an automatic yes or no, it depends. So if there has been a divorce through the British courts, and the process involves the signature, right? The signature of the husband, meaning the husband has cooperated with the process and also has given his affirmation of the divorce via his signature, then it counts as an Islamic divorce as well, because him endorsing the process of divorce would imply that he also agrees to divorcing his wife as per the divorce. Because at the end of the day, a divorce is a talaq, right? So the words talaq don't have to be mentioned. If a man divorces his wife, then that constitutes a talaq. A scenario which is quite common, in which an Islamic divorce isn't an Islamic divorce doesn't happen despite a court-based divorce is when the court has unilaterally annulled the marriage and the husband has not cooperated, meaning that he doesn't want to cooperate with the divorce process because he doesn't want to divorce his wife, right? But the wife has forced the divorce through the courts and the judge has annulled it, right? Now, while there may be very good reasons why the judge has done that, right? And the wife has very good reasons why she has gone and sought the divorce, and she needs to do that, and she should do that. It doesn't count as an Islamic divorce because for the annulment to count Islamically, the judge has to be Muslim. Does that make sense? The judge has to be a Muslim judge who meets who is working under an Islamic authority, and in the absence of an Islamic authority, it has to come from a committee of Muslims, right? And it is based on this that you have the system of Sharia councils in the UK. That is really the primary function. The main reason why we need Sharia councils is because in the absence of Islamic political authority, the Sharia council is able to do some of the things that only a political authority can do, i.e. like a politically appointed judge or a ruler can do. And one of those things is the annulment of marriages in the absence of the husband, or the annulment of marriages upon an application from the wife. And in that scenario, a woman would have to also get a divorce from the husband privately. Ideally privately. If he cooperates, then it's done, and it doesn't cost any more money, and it's straightforward and it's quick. However, if he does not cooperate and the wife has she has a case for annulment, then she needs to go to a Sharia council. All right, any Sharia council, as long as there's a committee there is a panel in the Sharia council that decides on these issues, and then she will have to go through that process. So it becomes a two-tier process if the husband has not cooperated. Okay.
Thank you. Jazakallah, Sheikh. Thank you so much. Let's take the next question, inshallah. So the next question we have is on mortgage, Sheikh. So the brother's asking a question on mortgage. Is mortgage haram? And he's planning on purchasing a house to live in. So if you can elaborate on buying a house on mortgage, is it haram and what not?
Yeah, this is a common question. Before I go to that question, I just want to add one note to what I said before about the divorce issue. And that is, inshallah, if there are men watching this, I just want to say that if a marriage has broken down to the point where a wife wants a divorce, she wants to be removed from that marriage, then a man has one of two options. Either he engages in some sort of constructive process of rebuilding the marriage, of rehabilitating the marriage, right? By way of arbitration, by way of just trying to win his wife back over, etc. Either he does that, or he divorces her. There's no third way, right? And there is nothing more dishonorable and even more disgusting than a man to abuse a woman by withholding divorce from her, right? By making her life difficult just for the sake of making her life difficult, right? So for example, a woman wants divorce and the man doesn't want to divorce her. Now he proceeds to take constructive steps. After taking the constructive steps, it turns out, for whatever reason, that she is decided and she wants a divorce. Even if she doesn't have a legitimate, even if according to the man, she doesn't have a legitimate reason. But her legitimate reason could be any number of things. It could be that she doesn't like her husband. It could be she was forced into marrying him. It could be any number of those things. Now, I appreciate that there should be an effort by families, by the husband, to reconcile and rehabilitate and make the marriage work. Of course, that goes without saying. And the man should try to win her over and do all of the things and make all of the romantic gestures and all of the promises that need to be made and be serious about it and try to win his wife over. But if that doesn't work, then at some point, it has to go to divorce. And when it does, decisions have to be consciously made that enable both to move forward. And if that decision is it's the end and we're going to be divorced, there should be no further punishment. Here, for a man to punish his wife and soon to be ex-wife by not cooperating in a divorce process just to make her life difficult is a disgusting thing to do. And it is sinful because it is a form of oppression, right? And it's actually oppression by Sharia. Just because the Sharia hasn't given a woman the right to execute divorce unilaterally, and she has to go to a court or she has to go to a Sharia council, a man is taking advantage of her and using the Sharia against her. That is an awful thing to do. That's a horrible kind of injustice. And and if the marriage is ending acrimoniously, sometimes the husband withholds a divorce just for the sake of punishing her. Right? These are disgusting things to do. And whatever happens, we need to make sure that this is not something that, the reason why I'm saying this is because it happens so often, right? It happens so often. I regularly kind of have to deal with cases where this is happening, where husbands either they won't, it's all done, but they won't pronounce the divorce. If a marriage is going to end, it is better to end it quickly and amicably and easily. Why do you even want to go to a Sharia council when it's not necessary? Yeah. Sit with two witnesses with a piece of paper, make the divorce pronouncement in front of the two witnesses, or have an alim there to advise you on how best to pronounce the divorce and pronounce it and provide some evidence that it has been done. End of story. No Sharia council is needed. That's it. And the wife, she goes into her iddah, the waiting period. After 3 months, it's over. She can get on with her life. You can get on with her life. That is the system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is how simple and easy it is supposed to be. It isn't supposed to get dragged out for a year. It isn't supposed to get dragged out for 2 years because nobody can get hold of the guy and he's not cooperating with the marriage process, and the woman can't get a decision from the Sharia council because they're dragging their feet. It's not fair. That's not the right way to do things. So that's just, I thought I should maybe add that. The next question about mortgages, I've answered this many, many times. Look, there are three positions. There are three options with regards to mortgages. Number one is the option of precaution and piety. And that is that you take the strictest and the stricter view that mortgages are haram. Right? That mortgages are haram because, let's face it, it involves something that is haram, categorically haram, which is interest. Right? And interest is haram, no difference of opinion. Now, having said that, if a person takes that view, takes that position, then either they have to take a halal option, right? A halal alternative that doesn't involve interest in order to purchase a house, or they have to demonstrate or be in some kind of dire situation of necessity that forces them to consider taking a mortgage, for which they take a fatwa from a mufti. Is that clear to you, Brother Ma'ruf? Because maybe if you've understood it, then everybody else will. Yes?
Yes.
So now something that is haram is being justified on the basis of necessity. Okay? The way I advise people is I say that there is a fatwa so that means that if you're trying to be cautious, then take an Islamic mortgage if you can. Right? Now, some people have a problem with Islamic mortgages. I'm not going to take an Islamic mortgage because they're this and they're that and blah, 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 blah. If you have a problem with Islamic mortgages, right, that is not, you having a problem with Islamic mortgages is not a justification to take a mainstream mortgage. Let me make this point very, very clear to everybody, because I hear this nonsense all the time. Oh, you might as well take a mainstream mortgage because these Islamic mortgages aren't fair. They're too expensive. No. What kind of logic is that? Oh, I don't like the Islamic solution, so I'm now going to go and do the haram. It makes no sense. Yes, if you say, I'm not going to take the Islamic mortgage, but I'm going to take a fatwa that is more lenient on this issue, that's a different point. But you will often find that that fatwa requires you to make an attempt to take an Islamic mortgage, because that's one of the conditions that you can take advantage of this lenient fatwa based on necessity if you have tried all other alternatives. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So some people think, oh, this fatwa exists, that's it, I'm just going to take it now. I'm just going to go on and get a mortgage. It doesn't work like that. You have to look at the fatwa, look at the conditions of the fatwa, and make sure that those conditions are met by you. Only then is it halal for you to follow that fatwa. If you don't bother to read the conditions, don't bother following the conditions, then the mortgage still remains haram. Right? So yes, the fatwas exist. The European Council of Fatwa and Research gives that fatwa. Whether I agree with that fatwa or not is irrelevant. It's permissible for you to take it. This is very important. A lot of ulama won't advise in this way because they want you to follow their opinion. I don't want you to follow my opinion. I want you to solve your problem. If you have a problem of overcrowding, if you have a problem that's making life difficult for you, you need to move out, you need to get a house, the council's not giving you an alternative, etc. You need to buy a house. Well, you have one of two options. One option is the route of precaution and higher piety, right? That means you continue to struggle. You have patience. You continue to struggle. You rely on Allah, and you try to buy the house. You try to save up and buy a house cash, or borrow money privately, or something like that. Or if you don't have a problem with it, if you're happy to follow the fatwas of the ulama that endorse Islamic mortgage products, right, like the one with Ar-Rayyan and places like that, then you go ahead and you take that. In my view, that's perfectly legitimate. It's perfectly legitimate to follow the opinions of those scholars and their endorsement and take an Islamic mortgage from an Islamic bank. Is that clear?
Mm-hmm.
The second possibility, which is the option of that where you adopt something haram out of necessity. Here, ulama have different attitudes in terms of how they articulate that necessity. Some are very stringent and would only permit it in the direst of situations, and others have a broader kind of criteria based on which they establish necessity and have a more kind of relaxed set of conditions, such as the fatwa of, and everyone, if just note this down, the European Council of Fatwa and Research. However, it does have conditions, and you must follow those conditions, or the mortgage isn't halal for you. Okay? And like I said, it's irrelevant whether I agree with that fatwa or not. I advise people, and I say, if you need to purchase a house and you have no other option, and you're happy to follow the fatwa of ulama who have permitted it, then you can I can say this much, that it is permissible for you to take that fatwa. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
My opinion is irrelevant. My opinion is it is permissible for you to take that fatwa. That's my opinion, right? What my opinion is with regards to mortgages is irrelevant. You understand my point?
Absolutely.
This is how I try to present people with a solution. But that solution involves studying the conditions of that fatwa and fulfilling those conditions. Otherwise, the fatwa doesn't apply to you and the mortgage remains haram.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense? Inshallah, I hope so.
Shukran, jazakallah. Thank you so much. Sheikh, one thing I really like about you engaging, mashallah, one thing, you make us reflect. I think you make the students and the viewers reflect. So the questioner, when the questioner is asking a question, you're not just taking away the answer, what you were looking for. The Sheikh is also making you think for yourself, reflect, and then you go ahead and study, you do research, come back and ask more questions. That's how it should be. That's how we learn. And shukran once again, Sheikh. Jazakallah khairan.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't want to send people on some kind of, academic trip. You've asked me a question. I mean, all I'm saying is fatwas are there to be read.
Yes.
And they're often not without conditions.
Mm-hmm.
You have to follow those conditions. And those conditions, if you want me to tell you those conditions, then broadly speaking, they involve you being satisfied that you have taken all of the other means available and possible in order to purchase a house without an interest-based mortgage. Right? Naturally, that would also involve attempting to get an Islamic option.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Now, failing that, the Islamic Bank doesn't approve or etc., then you can go for the other one. Now, I don't know if that is stipulated as a condition. Go and read the European Council of Fatwa and Research's fatwa in order to establish that. Okay, it makes no difference to me because I'm saying there's competent muftis who sit on that panel who have permitted this, who have given this fatwa. It is permissible for an ordinary Muslim to take advantage of that if they have a serious need in their lives. And not having a house spacious enough for your children, in my view, is a serious need. Other ulama, like you can rent from the council and so what if you're overcrowded. That's their perspective. If you follow them, then follow their opinion and keep on struggling. I am happy to say that fatwa can be followed, but with its conditions. Okay?
Shukran. Thank you, Sheikh. With this, I'm going to take a short break, inshallah. So, respected viewers, inshallah, stay with us. We have a few more very interesting questions have come. So, stay with us, inshallah. And after the break, I'll see you, inshallah, shortly. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome back to What's Up Sheikh with myself, Ma'ruf Rahman. After the break, Alhamdulillah, just before the break, we had some really interesting sort of discussions on marriage, divorce, mortgage, and so on and so forth with our Sheikh Shamsul Duha. So brothers and sisters, inshallah, please keep asking your questions, inshallah. And if you haven't understood certain points, you can, rephrase the questions again. And if you want something to be clarified on, just pinpoint that particular point. Inshallah, we can elaborate on that for you, no problem, inshallah. So inshallah, so with this, let's move on to the next question. We have a few more questions here as well. So Sheikh, once again, the next question we have is on divorce as well. I'll just read out the question. Assalamu alaikum. I have been divorced and my ex-husband abused me physically, mentally, financially. Now he wants me to pay for divorce process from the court and give back the gold which was gifted to me during marriage, and he denied to pay mahar as well. Now, what should I do? What's your advice?
All right. So I think, look, let me deal with the second and third points, and then I'll come back to the point of the cost of divorce. So firstly, he has no right to ask you to return anything. No right whatsoever. Right? Unless something that he gave you was stipulated as some sort of a loan, like he lent you money, or you borrowed something from him. But anything that was given as a gift, anything that was given as mahar, etc., there is no return, and you shouldn't return it. Don't return it. Right? Some women, I don't know, they feel proud, that somehow they feel some sort of pride, and they're like, oh, I don't want his gifts, I don't need his money, I'm gonna give it back. What for? Why do you want to give it back for? Don't give it back. Don't give it back. Why? It's like you're playing into the guy's hands. He's abusive. He's been abusive to you, and you received a gift of a few £1,000s or whatever of gold, and now you want to return that and make him happy. Right? It's not his right. It belongs to you. You own it. You possess it. Just completely ignore that demand. Okay? And by the way, from when men demand gifts to be returned, the Prophet ﷺ said that whoever takes back a hadiyah, to the nearest meaning, whoever takes back a gift, it's like somebody who swallows back his own vomit. Right? It's like taking back your own vomit and drinking it. It's disgusting. Basically, the Prophet ﷺ was trying to illustrate it as a disgusting, wretched thing to do. Right? To take back gifts. Is that clear? So that's the first thing. If he hasn't paid your mahar, he owes that money to you until Qiyamah. And if you can't get it in the dunya, on the day of judgment, he will have to answer for it. That is, you don't owe him anything. If he's giving you mahar, if he's giving you gift, you owe nothing back. If he hasn't paid you all or part of the mahar. So for example, your mahar was £2,000. He paid you £1,000 cash, £1,000 is remaining, right? He owes it to you unless you write it off in return for a divorce. So for example, if you ask for khula and he says, okay, I'll give the divorce, but you write off that £1,000 mahar, then that is up to you. That's your decision, whether you write it off or not, right? But for me, it's like the issue is simple. If mahar is outstanding, it is owed, and it will always remain owed. And you can take whatever means necessary in order to get that paid. By that I mean, for example, seeking arbitration, getting other people in the community and elders and guardians involved to try to make the claim of your mahar to be paid back. There's nothing to be ashamed of to do that. It's like any other loan. It's like any other money owed. If somebody owes you £10,000 today, what are you going to do? Just sit quietly and let it go. Right? If somebody owes you your mahar, they owe you money. Right? And you should demand that it's paid. Okay? There's no need to go soft touch on this. All right? Now, so obviously, if you happily go to an arrangement, such as what we call the khula arrangement, where you say, do you know what? I want a straightforward divorce. Do you agree to give me a straightforward divorce now? If I agree to give you £1,000 of your mahar back, right? Now, that's a matter of agreement. You can do that. That's up to you, okay? But you're not under obligation to return any mahar. To return anything, and you're under no he is obligated to pay you any mahar that is owed. Finally, the issue of cost of divorce. Okay, cost of divorce, if you have filed for it, then obviously that should be you, right? You should pay for the cost of your own divorce because you have filed for it. Right? He doesn't have to pay for that. Yeah?
Yeah.
I think that's clear. Okay, inshallah.
Jazakallah. Sheikh, just on that note, one question just for the viewers as well. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, a person who married, let's say, 2 wives or 3 wives, and he promised, of course, the amount of mahar as well, and then he divorced them. Divorce took place, so he is obliged, to pay the mahar hatta al-qiyamah. So let's say he moved to a different country.
It's like if you owe somebody £5,000, right? You owe them.
Yeah.
It doesn't like owed money doesn't just disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
Mahar isn't subject to mahar. Mahar. There's a point at which mahar becomes due. Once it is due, it is either paid or it is owed. When it's owed, it remains owed, regardless of divorce afterwards. Does that make sense?
Shukran.
It's not like, it's owed when you married and then it's kind of cancelled if divorce happened. No, that doesn't happen. That's not how it works. Once it becomes due, it's now payable and you have to pay it. Right? It just goes without saying. It goes without saying. In fact, when divorces happen, one of the things that have to be settled is any mahar owed. That has to be settled, right? Return of gifts, that's not an issue of settlement because it's not supposed to be returned. It's not supposed to be returned at all. It's disgusting to even ask for it. Yeah. I want my gold back. It's not your gold. It's her gold. Right? What do you want the gold back for?
Shukran, Jazakallah. No, thank you. So that's one thing, sort of respected viewers, brothers and sisters. It's so important that we learn these things before getting married, before marriage. Okay, if we learn about what is marriage, what is divorce, and how does divorce take place, and then while you are married,
people do these things, right? People do these things in the community, just nonsense, utter disgusting nonsense, and then people make assumptions that this is Islam.
Absolutely.
People assume because Muslims are doing this, they assume it's got something to do with Islam. It's horrible. These are crimes in Islam. It's a crime.
Yeah. Right?
So this is the thing, isn't it? People want to behave however they want, and somehow Islam is to blame. I'm sorry. And if you make that assumption, it's because you've not done justice to your Islam. You've not learned it. You have to go and learn it. Go and do a course on marriage. Go and do a course on the Masail. You have to know these things. Just like you would know how these things work in the legal system. You'd go to a lawyer, you'd get advice, you'd find out what needs to be found out. You've got to do the same thing about Islamic laws and Islamic rules, and you should be willing to pay for it, just like you would pay your lawyer. Right? It's really, really important. Okay, carry on.
Shukran, Jazakallah. Let's take the next question. Next question I have. It's a question on finding a spouse online. So, Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. What's your view on apps like Muzmatch and other sort of marriage apps? The second question he asked also is eating fish fillet and chips from McDonald's halal?
Oh, okay. Got you. So the first question, it depends on two things. The culture of the matchmaking site, and your own conduct on the matchmaking site. And sometimes if your conduct is good, then the culture of the matchmaking site doesn't matter, as long as it's not some sleazy place, which hopefully it's not. All right. So if generally there's a matchmaking site that good eligible people go to, right? Don't go to something just because it's there. If it's something that good eligible people that go to it, and that's what it's kind of reputed for that, then it becomes a question of your own conduct. And that means, for example, making sure that people are not inappropriate in the kind of images they share of themselves, that a woman, when she shares her image, she has hijab, etc. Especially, if she's a practicing woman, there's no justification to take your hijab off just because you're putting your photo on a matchmaking site. That you then process after this, like the basic first step acquaintance, and when you want to proceed, that you go through your elders, that you involve your elders, involve your families. As long as it's like that, it mustn't result in things like dates and so on, because these things are haram. But there can be basic communications just to find out if there is an initial interest. And then there can be a meeting, with family members involved, and you can have a proper conversation in the meeting, because that is something that the Sharia allows. Does that make sense? Rather than kind of exchanging lots and lots of messages and getting emotionally connected, and then and things like that, because that's when on dating sites people end up becoming open to exploitation, because you don't know who that person is. That might be their whole game. So one of the ways to protect yourself on not date, did I just say dating websites, matrimonial websites? One of the ways to protect yourself from matrimonial websites, because not all matrimonial websites aren't, their basic structure is and the way the algorithms work, it's very mainstream. And there isn't a requirement, for example, for elders to be involved and so on. I know very few that are like that. Allahu A'lam, there may be some. So therefore, it's now down to you. It's a question of your conduct to ensure that your elders get involved. And the earlier you get them involved, for example, if it's a very good sign if you propose after some initial acquaintance, just basic details and information, and yes, I'm interested, or based on your details, if both of you agree that you're interested, then it's a good sign if both people agree to get elders involved and meet in person with elders present, right? But if one person proposes it and the other person turns it down, that might be a sign of different worldviews, that you have different values, right? And that should be initially a small alarm bell. And they should have a very, very good reason for turning that down. And that's a fundamental question of conduct and outlook, right? Somebody who doesn't want to involve their elders in the process better have a very, very good reason. And sometimes the reason is, I don't want to get their hopes up, and I'd like to meet you and see you first myself. Well, then at least make sure that there's a mahram present. The sister should have another mahram present. Maybe not your father or your mother, but maybe a brother or a sister, right? And even the brother should have somebody else present, so that there's no possibility of khalwa. But the sooner elders are involved, the better it is.
Shukran. Jazakallah. Sheikh, we have about 2 minutes left for the show to end. And just a quick follow-up. I think the brother sort of rephrased his question. Hi, Sheikh. Assalamu alaikum. May I ask you to point out that advice on marriage and divorce is based on religious grounding and rule, and advice should be sought from a solicitor regarding the legal issue. It is important because people may be misled from the advice about their...
Sorry, which question is this?
It's just been forwarded to me. I'm assuming it's a question on divorce being acknowledged from the court, British court.
Yeah, so I think that my answer was clear on that. There was no need for a follow-up. In the British court, if the divorce has been signed by the husband, then it is a legal divorce. Then it is an Islamic divorce as well. It counts in Islam. If the husband has not signed it and has not acknowledged it, right, and it's just been annulled by the judge from the courts, which is, I know, happens, then it doesn't count as an Islamic divorce.
Shukran. Thank you. Jazakallah. Thank you so much, Sheikh. Respected viewers, we have come to the last stage of our show. Alhamdulillah, we've had a really, really good discussion today. So inshallah, keep asking questions. We've discussed about marriage, divorce, mortgage, and so on and so forth. So keep them coming, inshallah. And as you know, without you guys, there is no WhatsApp the show. So inshallah, thank you, Sheikh. Jazakallah khairan for being with us. Shukran. Until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.